Hello, it's Bailey and welcome back to my channel. I am filming this a little unprepared. I am prepared with the list, but I'm supposed to be leaving my house in like 10 minutes to go to a Christmas, but here I am sat down here to do this. I do feel like I had a bit of a strange reading year and this list kind of reflects that. I wasn't in like any kind of era, so these books are kind of all over the place, but these are my top 10 books of 2022. So starting the list with number 10, I have A Lady for a Duke by Alexis Hall, and I feel like the only reason this is landing at number 10 for me, while it did get a 5-star, I struggled to give it the 5-star. At first I think I gave it a 4.5, and then I was like, no, it should be 5 stars. So that's why it's at the end of my list here, but this is a historical romance that I absolutely loved. It's a historical romance with trans representation as well as being friends to lovers. So this just kind of encompasses what I do love. It's a diverse historical romance, friends to lovers. It had to be a win for me. At number 9, I have Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. Overall, through the year and the past few years, I have been reading through her stuff, but this year especially, I was really reading through her stuff as an experience with my friend Martine. And so this one probably also ended up so low on the list because I read it in January, I believe, so it seems so far away, but I really just love all of Alice Oseman's work. Again, this is a very diverse, her whole world is diverse, relatable teenage things going on, and I loved this one. At number 8, I have And Every Morning The Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Fredrik Backman. I have loved Fredrik Backman in the past, but this one really just hit me. It's a very short novella. I read this on a camping trip, again, very quickly, but the way that the old man in this story just talks about his wife and like lifelong love and what was important to him really just stuck with me, and I loved it so much. If you want a good cry, this is a very good short story to get it from. The book I have for number 7 here is something I'm willing to claim as my biggest surprise of the year, because this is something very intimidating to me. I've kind of been off of fantasy for a few years and I was trying to get back into it this year, and I ended up loving this one by surprise, and it was Mistborn: The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. I will say every installment in this series, I struggle at the beginning for it to grab me, but as I get to the end, I'm just rooting for it so hard. I do think that this specific book in the series for me, which is the first book in the series, was redeemed or like grabbed my attention enough because there is a little sprinkle of a romance situation happening in this, so I'm excited to continue my journey with Brandon Sanderson. I'm still trucking on in this series and I hope to continue through quite a few of his things in 2023. Book number 6 is a book about potatoes, and that is The Martian by Andy Weir. Again, this is something kind of outside of what I would normally read. It is a science fiction set in space and it really is just a fun time. The main character in this is so interesting, and I do think that Andy Weir's writing just has a way of being funny and making science, well, it is like sometimes a concept I can't grasp, like he explains it well enough that it makes sense and is not like overdone, I guess. There is a lot of science, but his writing, because I've also read other work by him, doesn't make me feel like, this is so much science. I genuinely have a good time reading his stuff. At number 5, I have The Wallflower Wager by Tessa Dare. Overall, I just love Tessa Dare as a whole. Her writing's very fast. I read her stuff so fast it's ridiculous. But this one also is kind of like a friends to lovers situation, which I clearly love. And I'm letting this stand as like a representation of the series and how much fun I've had reading it. At number 4, I have the last historical romance on the list, which makes this my favorite historical romance of the year. I kind of harped on about this series. Again, I didn't put like multiple books in series on this list. I just chose one from the series. And so I have Her Night with the Duke by Diana Quincy. I read this entire trilogy. I actually think there may be more books coming out, but I read the 3 books that are out this year and was absolutely obsessed with them. I did read them pretty like close together. And again, this is diverse historical romance. Such a good time. In this one especially, our main character is a widow, so she has a little bit more like sexual freedom than if she was like an innocent person in a historical romance. So I thought that was a very fun aspect of this book, and if you want to try historical romance, this is the one this year that I would be like, this one, try this one. Okay, I just realized right now my top 3 books of the year are all nonfiction. Was this my nonfiction era? Who am I? I literally didn't realize that when I made the list that this happened. So number 3 is a memoir and it is Know My Name by Chanel Miller. And Chanel Miller is a sexual assault survivor, and this is her telling her story. The case that this is revolved around, you definitely have heard of. It's a very popular case, but this is her claiming the story, telling the story, and it's very powerful. Chanel Miller is such a strong woman in my opinion. Even if you don't usually read nonfiction or memoirs, I think that it's worth it to at least listen to the audiobook of this, and this is something I would love to reread. I just think there's so much like valuable knowledge in here, and the story is so powerful in here that I think everyone should experience it. Number 2 for the year, which this is the only book on the list that I don't own, and I feel like I've been harping on about it for so long. I need to just purchase a copy. But that is Equal Partners by Kate Mangino. This is a nonfiction about sharing responsibilities in the household, but this stands out to me so much because, again, of how inclusive this story is in terms of it includes explanations for all kinds of partnerships, and I thought it was just described very well. This book has gotten like no hype, so if you haven't looked at this, I encourage you to at least, again, give this one a try. And now, finally, my favorite book of the year. I've been holding on to this all year. I read this again pretty early on in the year, and this is something I've been excited for a long time, and it did deliver. So my number 1 book of 2022 is The Stranger Beside Me by Ann Rule. And so as a nonfiction, this is a true crime story. Ann Rule is a true crime writer. She was a journalist, she writes books. But to me, what is unique about this is the story of Ted Bundy, but Ann Rule, as a true crime writer, actually knew Ted Bundy. So I think this is a very interesting perspective. A lot of people do say that she's very like self-inserty in this and some of her other work as well. Like she makes herself seem way more important to the story than she really was. But I thought it was interesting, and I do think that she told like his true story well, even if she did insert herself a little bit. Ted Bundy. I am very intrigued by Ted Bundy. I feel like it's weird to say, but I'll say it. I feel like Ted Bundy probably is my favorite serial killer. I just think the story of his like escaping and just all the stuff he did is so absurd, and like how did it happen, that it's like I do want to know more, and I think that this delivered in the information giving. So again, this is a pretty chunky book. I did have to stop tabbing, and I hope to go back in this and actually highlight because of how much I wanted to mark up in this book. So that's my list. That is the list for 2022. Again, that's such a strange list of books I feel like to put out there, but those are my favorites. That's what I was vibing with this year. I don't know what era I'm going into in 2023. I feel like I'm entering chaos, and that's fine. So thank you so much for spending some time with me today, and I will see you again very soon. Bye.